Welcome back, everyone, to Behind the Arc Basketball. Rough starts are just never a good sign to start off the season, but it's all about how you finish. In this video, I'm going to give a rundown of 5 college basketball teams who have improved tremendously during the first month of the 2020-21 college basketball season. All 5 of these teams got off to slow starts this season, but have been able to bounce back and improve tremendously to close out the year 2020, heading into now 2021. We're going to start off here, number 5 on the list for most improved for the first month this season happens to be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. After last season's NCAA tournament ban, Georgia Tech was projected to be a top half team in the ACC this season. Right now, they got themselves a record of 5-3 overall, 1-1 in the ACC. The Yellow Jackets finished 5th last season in the ACC as they won their last 6 of 7 games. Georgia Tech returning their top 3 scorers for this season from last season with Michael DeVoe, Moses Wright, Jose Alvarado, all coming back to the program. However, to start off this season, they just could not put it together with a worse start by going 0-2 in the month of November to start off with a loss in 4 overtimes they had against Georgia State. And also in their next game, they lost by 10 points against Mercer. Georgia State and Mercer shockingly have a combined record of 13-3 overall this season. Still though, an ACC team should be able to win their non-conference games against mid-majors. And in 2021, there's no more room for Georgia Tech to be losing against bottom-tier ACC opponents if they want to make it to the NCAA tournament. However, as of late, Georgia Tech has really taken it up the notch, and they have been improving as they have won their last 5 of 6 games, which includes a 79-62 victory over Kentucky, in which Georgia Tech forced Kentucky to turn it over 21 times. Also, Georgia Tech won by 11 against Nebraska, and they won their first conference game 72-67 against North Carolina to close out the year. The Yellow Jackets will face Wake Forest and Notre Dame during their first 2 games in the new year for 2021. 2 teams on paper that they should be able to get the W against. And that could very well set up the situation here with Georgia Tech heading into next weekend's matchup playing Louisville, with Georgia Tech possibly having a record of 3-1 in the ACC if they do win those 2 games next against Wake Forest and Notre Dame. Now we'll move on to number 4, most improved to close out 2020. Happens to be the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Mississippi State with a record of 6-3, 1-0 in the SEC. In the offseason, the Bulldogs lost their top 2 players with Robert Woodard and Reggie Perry to go to the NBA draft. Without the 2 of them, it took a while for Mississippi State to put the pieces together this season, but they've been getting better. On opening night, the Bulldogs could only score 42 points in a 53-42 loss against Clemson. The next day on Thanksgiving, Mississippi State once again suffered their second loss of the season, 84-73 against Liberty to start out 0-2. In their last 7 games, though, Mississippi State's completely turned it around by going 6-1. Their only loss in that last 7-game span was in double overtime against the Dayton Flyers. With the Bulldogs' young roster comes 3 of Mississippi State's starters as sophomores. Sophomore point guard Iverson Molinar. He missed the first 3 games of the season, but he has been a major factor offensively, averaging 18.7 points per game in his 6 games. Without their leading scorer Molinar, Mississippi State posted a 1-2 record. Sophomore guard DJ Stewart is right up there in scoring with Molinar this season, averaging over 18 points per game as well, while Stewart is also shooting the basketball over 47% from 3-point range. Stewart scored a career-high 32 points against the Dayton Flyers. Both of these players here, Stewart and Molinar, have improved tremendously since where they were as freshmen from last season, as they add a 1-2 scoring punch for Mississippi State. The Bulldogs' last victory was their most impressive one so far this season. Started off SEC play with a bang as they got the W, 83-73 against the Georgia Bulldogs, handing Georgia their first loss of the season. The big difference here for Mississippi State has to be the free throw shooting. That is a huge improvement. On opening night against Clemson, Mississippi State went just 8 for 27. I am repeating that correct here, folks. They won 8 for 27 at the free throw line against Clemson. That is only good for 29.6%. During their last game to close out 2020 against Georgia, Mississippi State shot the ball at the free throw line 13 for 18. That is 72.2% at the charity stripe. Major improvement right here for Mississippi State, and I've got them most improved at number 4 here to close out 2020. Now at number 3 for most improved. That happens to be the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas now with an 8-1 record overall, 2-0 in the Big 12, and they won their past 8 straight games. The Jayhawks would have ended up in the #1 overall seed last season in the NCAA tournament if it hadn't been canceled. But to start off this season, Kansas, in their opening game, got shredded against Gonzaga, losing 102-90. During their first matchup, Kansas looked like they really missed Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike, who both went over to the NBA in the offseason. Without their top 2 scorers from last season, Kansas needed to look for rising stars to generate offense by stepping up and to rise to the occasion fast. And they got that here. After the loss against Gonzaga, Kansas has won 8 straight games in a row. And in the process, they've seen a rising star that I did not have on my radar this season. He's come out of nowhere. Jalen Wilson for Kansas. He only played in 2 games last season, but he has broken out. The Champions Classic game against Kentucky, he broke out in the second half, and ever since that game, it has been Wilson on from there on out, as Jalen Wilson scored 23 points, 10 rebounds against Kentucky to help out Kansas come from behind by 13 points down to get the victory, doing most of that damage in the second half. Also stepping up in a big way, sophomore shooting guard Christian Brown taking a jump up this season, scoring a career-high 30 points against St. Joseph's. He made 6 3-point shots against West Virginia. Junior guard Achai Egbaji, he has been the most consistent player offensively this season for the Jayhawks, but when everybody on Kansas goes off, that's when the Jayhawks are the most difficult to stop. And before that matchup against West Virginia, Kansas was getting scoring production basically from 1 player per game that would carry Kansas to victory. However, against West Virginia, the entire starting 5 went off for double figures. And that's when Kansas outscored West Virginia 44-29 in the second half to win 79-65. Currently, Kansas has victories over 4 AP Top 25 opponents during the time that they played them. Number 3 Kansas versus number 8 Texas to open up the new year. Appointment TV, as that one will be tipping off January 2nd, tomorrow, as I'm recording this video on New Year's Day. That one is going to be a good one here, folks. Definitely here, as we'll see how that game goes. But Kansas at number 3 here for most improved for this season. Now moving on to number 2. We got for this one for most improved the Tulsa Golden Hurricane out here. 5-3 overall, 2-1 in the American. And now is the time for Tulsa. They're starting to get hot at the right moment. Exactly like last season. At the beginning of January last season, where Tulsa got hot. They won against Memphis one of their games last season, 80-40. And they're doing it once again now, coming off an incredible victory over Houston earlier this week. But the Golden Hurricane, they started out with 2 straight losses. Against TCU, they lost by 5. They lost against South Carolina by 11. As of late, though, Tulsa has turned it around. They are 5-1 during their past 6 games. The only loss was back in December, that they lost by 4 points against Wichita State. Tulsa's victories against conference opponents against the number 1 and number 2 projected teams in the American Conference preseason poll with wins over Houston and Memphis so far in the conference. Tulsa's defense, that has been key here towards the turnaround for the Golden Hurricane. Tulsa has allowed their opponents to score 70 points or less in all of their 8 games played this season. During their past 4 games, as part of Tulsa's 4-game winning streak, the Golden Hurricane are currently holding their opponents to just over 53 points per game during this past 4-game winning streak. And on Tuesday, Tulsa picking up their most impressive victory of the season, in which they barely able to squeak it out against Houston there in a 1-point victory in a game that Tulsa held Houston to under 36% shooting from the floor. Now's the time to watch out for Tulsa. The big question will be is whether Tulsa here can build off Tuesday's victory against Houston and keep on winning consistently in American. That was the problem last year for them. Even though they were at the top of the conference last season, the problem was that they weren't consistent towards the end of last season here. And they can make it in the tournament if they keep on being consistent and take that win against Houston and that momentum into the year 2021 to start off. And now we're down to 1. The most improved college basketball team that I see to close out 2020 happens to be the Seton Hall Pirates. Currently 7-4 right now. They are 4-1 in the Big East. The off-season loss of leading scorer for Seton Hall, Miles Powell, that loomed large, especially to start off the season. The Pirates lost the crusher in their opening game, 71-70 over Louisville, when Takal Molson missed a game-tying free throw as time expired. The Pirates also lost in that game against Louisville their playmaking senior point guard, from Harvard, he transferred from. Bryce Aiken. In the first half of Louisville, he went down. And he went down in that season opening game with a high ankle sprain that he happened to miss 6 games so far this season due to injury. But Aiken has returned back to Seton Hall. He returned back in mid-December. And he has been able to boost up the depth there of the Pirates' backcourt. Seton Hall started out the season with a record of 1-3, and they had losses against the Rhode Island Rams at the road at the Ryan Center, also lost on neutral court against the Oregon Ducks as well. However, the Pirates, they've completely turned it around, and they're 6-1 in their last 7 games. The only loss since December 6th for Seton Hall was when Providence won against them in overtime when A.J. Reeves came in clutch for the Friars and hit the game-winning 3 at the corner. But the big player here, of course, for Seton Hall, has to be senior forward Sandro Mabakalashvili. He is looking like a potential Big East Player of the Year this season. He has been the star for the Pirates. He scored 30 points against Penn State, 32 points against St. John's, and as of late, not only Mamu can step up and fill the void and score big time, it has been multiple players here, and that is why Seton Hall is really stepped up in a huge way. Seton Hall closed out 2020 with a 17-point victory on the road against Xavier. And the Pirates did it with 6 players who scored in double figures. And they also shot the ball perfect, 14 for 14 at the free throw line. Seton Hall is going to even get more dangerous. Watch out for this team as the new year rolls on into 2021. From a 1-3 start to now at 7-4, the Pirates have bounced back while facing a very difficult schedule so far this season. So that's a wrap here to this video. The 5 most improved college basketball teams from November to December to close out 2020. Moving on now to the new year. Hit that like, hit that share, subscribe as well, comment on my channel if you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, as this is Behind the Arc Basketball.